Video games are important. More than 2.5 billion people play video games in some capacity. That's over 32% of the population. Any hobby that big must be worth examining, because there's something special about them. Their ability to teach and build communities. I mean, they raised me more than my parents, and they've introduced me to more people than I would ever know if I didn't play them. So what makes them great? Video games give you a way to experience a new world. One where you're not a boring normal person. One with endless possibilities, like maybe you could be a hitman, or a rock. No matter what rock-based simulation game you choose, when you're playing it, you're not you. And sometimes, that's a good thing. Sometimes, it's good to escape from your problems, even if it's just for a moment. And video games provide the perfect method to do so, with these complex worlds that you can explore and interact with, or maybe you'll just hit a ball with a paddle as the time passes you by. Wait a second, didn't I say that video games have an ability to teach? What's that all about? Celeste is a beautiful game in all meanings of the word, but my favorite thing about it is the story. It's full of lessons about mental health and anxiety. In Celeste, you play a girl named Madeline as you climb an incredibly hard to climb mountain. However, the game isn't about the physical challenges of that climb. It's about the mental struggles that come with it. Early on, you meet a character that looks just like Madeline, but emo. Her name is Madeline. She is referred to as part of you throughout the entire game. She is basically Celeste's antagonist. But if you pay attention, you might realize Madeline's just extremely overprotective, to the point where she causes Madeline to have a panic attack. As you put the pieces together, it becomes clear that Madeline represents Madeline's anxiety. In order to beat the game, you don't just ignore or work around Madeline, you have to work together. Because when anxiety goes unaddressed, all it does is grow, until it destroys you, or in this case, sends you all the way back down to the bottom of the mountain. And Celeste teaches us that the only way back up is by addressing that anxiety. Another example of the lessons you can learn by playing through this incredibly hard platformer is about how to help someone else. There's a chapter in the game in which you meet Mr. Oshiro, the owner of a dying resort that's a complete mess. Throughout the chapter, Madeline attempts to help by cleaning the resort, but in the end, Madeline just makes it worse. Right after that, Madeline has a conversation with an old woman who explains you have to let people recover on their own schedule. And the best thing you can do is be there for them if they need you. These lessons are so impactful because you're Madeline. It's not someone else's journey. You're not watching someone do it. You're the one who did it. It's your mistake, so it's your lesson. These are lessons that will stick with you, because unlike a book or a movie, in a game you feel a much stronger connection to the main character learning these lessons, because you control them. This creates a very good way to learn. Sorry if that was too boring. Here's a baby pig for not clicking off. If you're lucky enough to be watching this after COVID-19, first off, how's the year 3000? Second, basically we should all be in quarantine, and because of that, connecting with other people is harder than ever before. Luckily, video games have swooped in and kept a lot of people connected, even when they normally wouldn't be. I mean, the only reason I talk to my friends is for the interviews for this video and so I can play Among Us. Video games are great during COVID because they're really good at uniting people and then making them hate and despise each other. It's incredible, with games like Among Us that bring the feeling of a party and bluffing games to a time where we are all very isolated. In that isolation, video games are a great way to at least ease the pain of not hanging out in real life. The reason that playing a game with friends is more fun or engaging than watching stuff with them is the sense of interaction. Like, I killed you in cold blood, not someone else killed another rando in cold blood. It's a sense of interaction that's lacking in this time of social distancing. In a world that is being destroyed by a pandemic, the sense of community that video games provide is nice. All the great multiplayer games bring back the social interaction that has been lost. The interaction that is baked into games is great, but, talking to people is boring. And if people are the only thing that makes your game fun, then it's boring. The game has to give you something to talk about. In games like Among Us, you talk about the evidence and who is evil. And since that changes every game, it doesn't get stale. But games like Apex Legends, Animal Crossing, or Valorant, which would get stale after a while for some players, they still thrive through the pandemic. Why? Great question, me, and don't worry, I got the answer. It's new content that keeps these games from getting stale. Things like DLC, updates, bug fixes, and that's it. There's no more. It makes the game always fresh. There's always something new to experience. While some players might stick around without updates because they really like the gameplay, and some games are entertaining enough to have broad success without updates, games like Valorant and Apex would get stale because there are so many different shooters, but the updates keep them fresh and fun and always a new experience. Video games, unlike movies or shows, are definitely easier to work on in person, but at least going virtual doesn't completely stop the process if they have enough money. So games like Apex and Valorant manage to keep fresh with updates and bug fixes. But even those games wouldn't be fun without other people, because fighting bots isn't as fun as fighting real people who just do a lot of dumb stuff, let alone humans are much more fun to work with. So it's good that video games have the ability to build communities. Boom, new section. Such a great segue. No time wasted with the whole title card. No, just straight to the topic. No lollygagging. Let's go. Video games build communities, not the kind with the jock, lovable nerd, religious one, Britta, Jeff, the dad from Arrested Development, and John Oliver. No, instead I'm talking about the kind of community that forms around that. Video games seem to be a great tool to unite people, but what makes video games such a great way to build a community? I think it's because of the player's involvement when experiencing a game. With a movie or show, you just watch the characters. With a book, you just don't. But with a game, you control the main character. You have an effect on the world, so you feel more invested. And being invested in a piece of media easily leads to being invested/involved in the community. For example, let's say we take one game and one movie that have been played/experienced by the same amount of people. On an average playthrough of the game, they ran through the terrain, they fought the bad guys, they uncovered secrets, they probably got stuck in an embarrassing point, they might have found some collectibles, fought more bad guys, run through more terrain, solved some puzzles, and fight the final boss. In a movie, they watched it. There is much less engagement in a movie, which is not inherently a bad thing, but for the average person, the amount of engagement in a video game is more captivating, and is more likely to get people interested in a community, which at a wide scale means the game has a bigger fandom than the movie, even though they both got experienced by the same amount of people. If you want numbers to prove this, I got them. One game and one movie, both seen/played by around 2 to 3 million people, both released in the year 2010, both standalones, both loved. The Social Network versus Super Meat Boy. In order to test the size of these communities, I went to their Reddits and compared the member counts, and I was surprised. The Social Network has no Reddit. Meanwhile, the Super Meat Boy had a Reddit with 1.4k members. Now, am I going to use this small anecdote as evidence that games are better at building communities than movies? Yes. Video games often feature a lot of characters for people to interact with. Video games also have the option, unlike movies or shows and books, to have a character customizer, which can lead to inspiration for art, which helps grow the community. I mean, some video game art is amazing. Some. Video games are often overlooked, and a lot of communities have a lot of bad. But if you're able to sort through the absolute garbage, you can become so involved. You can meet people and form friends through video games. Even if you meet someone in real life, I can't even name all the people I wouldn't be friends with if it wasn't for video games, because they're a great way to bond and work with your friends, even when you're working with them to kill a different friend. Friendship formed over murder is still friendship. Co-op games are incredible. Games like Portal 2, which let you and a bud use your two brains as one to solve puzzles, Overcooked 2, which forces you to communicate well or get 1,000 times better, Apex Legends, which lets you use tactics and work together to kill the enemies. These all just strengthen bonds between friends. Competitive games like Uno, which let you play around and laugh while playing against each other. Ultimate Chicken Horse, which lets you work together while destroying each other by creating a hellscape of a 2D platformer. And games like Smash Bros, which let you kick the hell out of your friends. These all strengthen relationships and let you take out your anger in the context of a virtual world. And if strengthening bonds with your friends, and also the ability to kick the hell out of them, isn't what video games are about, maybe I'll never know the truth.